I present to you the uDraw game tablet, which was initially released for the Wii, and then later the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Quick history lesson here. It had okay enough success on the Wii, nothing crazy, but nothing bad, which makes sense considering its casual audience, but Xbox and PlayStation? They misjudged their audience horrifically, and this mistake resulted in 1.4 million unsold units. Yikes. They really thought the people playing Call of Duty on Xbox Live would have the same interest in this as Wii sports fanatics? Anyways, this accessory was such a failure that it ultimately led to the bankruptcy of the company who produced it, THQ. Only 9 games came out for the peripheral before it was scrapped. So today, I'm going to play through every uDraw game to figure out if this device has anything good going for it. The uDraw was launched on November 14th, 2010, and there were 3 games that were immediately available: the pack-in title, uDraw Studio, Pictionary, and Dude's Big Adventure. The first one, uDraw Studio, is not really a game, but is instead an art tool, which makes sense given the nature of the device. It was the main pack-in title for the tablet. There's a main painting mode where you can create your own unique drawings with all the available color, style, and shape tools. Even though my artistic skills are very limited, I'm quite impressed with how in-depth this is considering it's just a Wii game. I would have loved this title when I was younger. It kinda reminded me of the Kid Pix programs that I used to mess with on the first Windows XP computer I had access to. With how much you can do in this, there's a dedicated tutorial section explaining every part of the tool. Since this isn't a normal game, the completion goal for this one is up in the air. I decided that my goal for this one was to simply just draw and mess around with this tool for an hour total. I noticed there was a coloring book section that allows you to draw in pre-made designs, and I checked out the abstract tab. So I made it my goal to fully color in this design over the course of the next hour. And while this isn't an actual game, I had a decent bit of fun here. It gave me some time to take it easy, do some doodling, and chat with viewers on twitch.tv/Storster, all at the same time. After playing every Wii game I go through, I like to give it a proper rating. It's hard to really give this a proper score because, again, this is really just an art program on a Wii disc, but I gave this a 5 out of 10. May not be a killer app for the Wii, but I guess it doesn't need to be. I'm also giving these games a difficulty rating, and I guess for this one we'll give it a 1. There's not really a way to mess up art. Next up is Pictionary. This is the one uDraw game that requires more than one player, so I got the help of my girlfriend Myra for this. I'll put links to her stuff in the description if you want to check that out. This is another title that I don't think needs much explaining because this is Pictionary. You know, that game where you get on teams and guess what is being drawn. In its proper form, I'm pretty sure this game is meant to be played with a minimum of 3 people, but we made it through regardless. We just went back and forth on who was guessing and who was drawing. You just have to pass the tablet to whoever is up to draw. And oh yeah, make sure not to look at the screen when the drawer gets informed what the clue is. This went as well as you'd expect. Some were ultra easy to guess. And others I couldn't wrap my head around.
The vet's office. It was a polling place.
We eventually realized you can get a new clue if you don't like the one you have. And thank God, because I don't know how the hell I'd draw some of these. This alone killed a solid hour of time, but there's also another mode labeled Mania, with the huge change being the different game board. This didn't change how we played this from a 2-player perspective though. This one was way shorter, taking less than half an hour. While this is a more proper game than an art tool, this is still something you could very easily do without the uDraw. There's not really a reason to pick up this title, and I doubt many did just for this. The art program I can maybe see myself going back to just to do a silly doodle, but this? I had many moments where I wished I was able to draw on a whiteboard with a marker for my clues, or even play one of the browser game equivalents with a mouse on my computer. So I think that's a good indicator of where I'm at with it. I gave this the exact same ratings as the Drawing Studio. It's not bad, but it's Pictionary. The last of the launch titles is Dude's Big Adventure, and I'm happy to say this one is an actual video game. It's a platformer, but before you do that, you're able to design the character you'll be playing with. I decided to just make it purple with a generic smiley face. While there are a couple side features to explore, the meat of this game is under the play section. Each of these 4 modes have a unique gimmick that the platforming is built around. I suppose I'll start at the top. Pen Panic entails directly using the tablet pen to control your movement. You want to go right? Click to the right. Want to kill an enemy? Click on it. Want to make the dude jump? Draw a platform to bounce off of. At first it's a bit tricky to get the hang of if you're used to traditional 2D platformer controls, but fortunately this game is quite forgiving. There's no concept of lives here. If you die, you'll just respawn at a nearby checkpoint. This is a trend you'll see in all the proper uDraw games, and I assume it's because these games are meant for young children. Don't expect this to rival some Kaizo ROM hack. Each mode has 15 levels. The first one here took me the longest of the bunch, but I think it was simply due to getting used to the idea of using a tablet instead of a controller. This was alright for starting out, but this is not the greatest offering this game has. On the other hand, next up is Roly Poly, and this is easily the best of the bunch by far. It's time for the tablet itself to shine. No pen required here. It uses tilt controls, with jumps being done via the A button on the Wii Remote. This works perfectly in your hands, and I immediately felt way more at home here. I was breezing through many of these stages. While this one still had its brief moments of frustration, there was so much more variety from a level design perspective. There's many sections that made me think of other things, such as Plinko or Breakout. I think as a kid, this would have been the one section I left with a smile on my face. Unfortunately though, we need to talk about the last 2 options. Bubble Trouble is the third up to bat, and this one is a lot more finicky. You're in a bubble, and move it simply with the pen. The thing that makes this tricky is how easily the bubble can pop if you scrape any surface going by. This one tested my patience a bit for sure. A lot of the levels are designed to have cycles in one way or another, so you'll need to do a healthy mix of waiting and precise movements to keep your bubble alive. Disappointingly, Fan Frenzy is the last of the modes, and I think it's the worst of the bunch. Dude turns into this balloon figure, and you use a fan to control his movement. This one can be really frustrating to manage because he bounces around so easily. I'd say half my experience getting through this one was just dealing with the erratic bouncing off of the walls and corners. So my best to worst ranking here is Roly Poly, Pen Panic, Bubble Trouble, and then Fan Frenzy. I rated this a 5 because sure, there's some fun to have here, but there's only one mode I'd ever want to play again. And also, I was able to beat every mode in about 3 hours. So even if you struggle a little bit, you'll still breeze through it. Difficulty I'll put it at 3 because, you still have to move the controller a bit, but there's not really a consequence for dying. Now we get to the first game I'm actually excited to talk about, Spongebob Squigglepants. Gameplay-wise, this is a WarioWare clone, but I say that in the best way possible. Immediately, you'll run into live-action cutscenes starring Patchy the Pirate himself. There's not much of a story here, but it's just fun to see the developers get the real deal here, because so many licensed games in this era don't even use the original voice actors. Out of everything you'll see on the uDraw, this entry has the most love put into it by far. On top of what I just said, it has a ton of really unique art styles sprinkled throughout, and the gameplay itself is simple fun. Like I said, it's really just WarioWare, but I think the creativity they put into making this SpongeBob themed makes up for that. There's references left and right. My favorite of the art styles can be seen in this appropriately titled Punk section. It was almost distracting, but in a good way, because I couldn't stop appreciating how unique this art style is. I did not expect a single uDraw title to have such a personality like this, but here we are. It not only has such a personality visually, but it also takes great advantage of the tablet here. This may be the one proper uDraw game where I don't have any major complaints about the controls. The sad part about this is how short the main story mode is. I was able to reach the credits in 45 minutes. If it was longer, I would give it a higher rating, but I think giving it a 6 is fair, all things considered. Difficulty I put right in the middle at 5. There's slight little bits of challenges, but it's not that hard. It really is just on the same par as any WarioWare game you could boot up. The last thing I expected on the uDraw was a perfect love letter to SpongeBob, but here we are. Oh boy, it's time for Kung Fu Panda 2. And not gonna lie, this game was so boring that I forgot most of it. This game has the feel that unfortunately many Wii games do from this era, very generic and bland. If you've played enough titles on the console, you should know what I'm talking about. Everything is just so dull here, like just look at the colors, it just kinda makes me want to go to sleep. Just like the separate Kung Fu Panda Wii title, Legendary Warriors, this one is also a beat-em-up style game that you can just button mash your way through. Weirdly at the same time though, my biggest complaint is the controls. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the uDraw overall is not the best experience as a left-handed individual, and I happen to be one of them. You see, this game requires constant inputs from both the stylus and the Wii remote buttons, but if I'm holding the stylus in my left hand, what the hell am I supposed to do with the remote sitting on the left? I have to either stop using the tablet pen each time, or if I want to use both at once, I have to do an uncomfortable setup with my right hand. No matter what, it's a nightmare if you refuse to hold the pen in your right hand, like me. Anyways, you want to know the cherry on top of all my issues with this? I couldn't even beat the game. I got stuck on the sequence where you're supposed to find armor to bring to this guy, but apparently I never found all the pieces. I explored this entire zone here, and even backtracked to see if it was somehow back there. I did this for over 20 minutes, and after a certain point, I gave up. Out of curiosity, I looked up a Let's Play of this to reference, and what? Why didn't that happen to me? Did I get softlocked out of playing the final boss? That seems to be the case, but even if it somehow wasn't, I don't have any more shit to give about this. My ratings for this was 2 overall and 3 for difficulty. Let's move on to a game that's more worth talking about. Oh yeah, if Kung Fu Panda had to have a licensed game, then Penguins of Madagascar had to as well. They are from the exact era of 2000s animated film franchises that have continued to be milked way longer than they should. Unlike Kung Fu Panda, I think at its core, this game has great potential. It's a puzzle platformer that will require you to juggle between all 4 penguins here quite often. Each of them have their own unique abilities, and at times, you'll need to use all 4 of them together to clear jumps and open doors. Some of these levels actually got me thinking a bit. I wasn't expecting the level design to be as fine as it was. Once more though, I can't be as nice when it comes to talking about the controls. All the controller issues I had with Kung Fu Panda were multiplied tenfold here. For a majority of the game, I was struggling to even get the jump button to activate correctly, which is done by pressing the button on the pen. After enough time, I realized its inconsistency came down to how I held the pen itself. If I held it in a less comfortable position, boom, the jump control worked way better. So not only did I have to hold the pen in a specific way that didn't feel comfortable to me, but I simultaneously was struggling with the Wii remote being on the left side once more. Sorry, this is just how my brain works. Because of this, I spent most of my time getting really frustrated over something that didn't even look that complicated. This control scheme in general was just not meant for platformers, but the left-handed struggles pile onto that. I ran into the same issue as Kung Fu Panda, where I can't even really remember what the game itself was about, cause I was more focused on minimizing my discomfort. I was trying to get these flimsy controls to show even a slight level of consistency. Unlike Kung Fu Panda though, I was able to beat this one, so I'll give it a 3. Due to this having some kind of challenge, I'll just give it a 5. It's still ultimately a kid's game. If you haven't noticed by the game so far, this accessory was meant for young children, and that couldn't be any more obvious than with Disney Princess Enchanting Storybooks. Just like the drawing title, this one isn't really a game, it's just an interactive storybook instead. There are stories from 6 Disney princesses you can explore, and they contain very shortened retellings of the media they came from. I had a couple people say in my chat while playing this that some of the details here aren't even accurate to the source material fully. That's something I can't confirm off the top of my head because I don't remember most of my childhood, and I'm not a Disney adult, but I'll take my viewers' words. That's so weird if true. But anyways, on top of that, you can tell this game was very lazily pasted together. When selecting any section of a story, the screen does a weird blank screen flash for a second. And also look at this text here. Come on. This is like someone learning they can add text to their drawings in MS Paint. There's no way the people that made this were paid enough to care. Also, this woman narrator will commentate even the littlest of things happening. Every single time you click the forward button, she just says,
Continue. Continue. Continue.
I swear over the following days, I heard this word in my dreams. I could not escape it. Anyways, to wrap it up, it's a toddler Disney game. What else do you want me to say about it? It has colors. Let's give this a 3 and difficulty 1. Now it's time for game number 8. uDraw Studio Instant Artist. This would be one of 2 final uDraw games that would release on November 15th, 2011. You heard that right. Its last release came out just a year after it started. I chose this one to mention first because it would have been a really anticlimactic ending. This is just an updated version of the original uDraw Studio art tool. All I can really say about it is that it has some extra drawing practice modes, which is neat I suppose, but there's not really any unique material that's worth talking about further in depth. So let's just give it the same rating as its predecessor. Alrighty then, I present you the final game of the batch, Marvel Superhero Squad, Comic Combat. I'm happy to report that this one is actually good, thank God. I'll admit, I don't really know much about Marvel compared to many people. Like, sure, I saw Iron Man when it first came out, cause like, who didn't? But I don't have intense knowledge about such. Regardless, I can still appreciate how cool the theming of this game is, cause it's appropriately themed around comic books. There are 6 sections of this game in total, and they are visualized by separate comic issues. I love the select screen interface that visualizes this so much. Throughout the game, you'll be able to swap between multiple characters at a time, and in this game they're called squaddies. You end up unlocking new ones as you progress through the story. And speaking of the story, it revolves around Dr. Doom, who is trying to claw his way into the real world, and we must stop him from obtaining the powerful artist's pen. I feel like this detail is a bit forced to connect to the uDraw, but we'll let it slide. This game does at times suffer from the same fate as Fu Panda, where you can just mash your way through sections, but at least this title has more charm to it, and there were a couple levels where I faced some real difficulty. I say in terms of raw difficulty from the game itself, not the controller, this game has the most out of any for the uDraw, but even then, you'll be fighting the final boss after only a couple hours, which is such a shame, because while it was easy to power through, I cannot get over how unique this game is over some others. You can tell this was made by some people that actually cared about the source material, in the same vein as Spongebob Squigglepants does. My favorite section was further in, where out of nowhere, we were just walking through space. And this is to further verify that each section of these levels is supposed to represent an individual panel of a comic, which is really neat. These moments of peak visuals make up for the fact of how short this is. When you beat Dr. Doom, you get a little animated scene to end it, and then it goes to silent credits. I suppose the people that made this clocked out for the day, but maybe I shouldn't dwell so much on a part of the game that doesn't really matter too much. This gave me the same joy that Spongebob Squigglepants did, so let's just give this an overall of 6 and a difficulty of 5. This appeals to such a unique interest that gamers never asked for. In theory, it's great, but it has multiple flaws. I didn't talk about this in the unique games as much, but on top of the questionable control schemes, the drawing detection wasn't the most accurate either. For example, in the Marvel game, you could do certain attacks by drawing specific lines, but often the game would just pick the action for you. It wasn't the most accurate to what I actually drew. This issue bled into every game in one way or another. I feel like at that point, what's the purpose? It worked for drawing titles, sure, but to think it would work just as well for platformers and beat-em-ups is crazy. Sure, you can technically play them, but do you really want to play it this way? Also, I'm sorry, but if the fucking VTech Smile can make a left-handed controller 6 years earlier, what is uDraw's excuse?